If you're ready to experience more peace and joy in your life, if you want to feel more comfortable in your own skin, and if you're ready to discover and expand on your energetic gifts and personal power, you're in the right place. So here's your host, Kelle Sparta.
Welcome back to Spirit Guides. I'm your host, Kelle Sparta, transformational shaman, spiritual business coach, spiritual coach. I am here, as always, on Mondays with my friend Joshua Radewan, who is also a spiritual coach, who specializes in doing a lot of stuff around the paranormal community. So let's talk today. It was so funny. We were planning on doing a different topic, and we got talking about some stuff that has been happening and some entity removals that Josh has been having to do and some things like that. And basically, we ended up talking about all this toxic spiritual shit. And so we're doing false light and toxic spiritual shit today. So, we're going to talk about that. But before we do that, I want to, we've had a couple of emails. I meant to do one of these on the last episode, and I totally spaced because I didn't open my spreadsheet because, I suck. And so we're going to read a couple of emails from our listeners, which I love getting listener emails. So if you guys want to write to me and you want your stuff read on air, please, by all means, send me some email at Kelle@kellesparta.com. This is the first one. It says, "Hi, Kelle. Just wanted to share. I noticed that ever since I got really serious about the boundaries for empaths and maintaining my energy field close to my body, random dogs don't bark and growl at me anymore. It used to make me anxious to see dogs on walks or playing off leash, and they would tend to react poorly when they saw me. But now they ignore me and are totally happy and my walks are much more peaceful. The animal communication episode made me think of this. It was a good episode. Warmly, Hannah." So for those of you who don't know, Boundaries for Empaths is a free class that's available on my website at kellesparta.com. If you go and you click on the blog button, and then you'll see it in the right-hand side of the blogs, it says Boundaries for Empaths, and you can click on that and sign up and get the free course on there. And that makes perfect sense, Hannah, because what the free course does is it helps pull your energy field in. Then her anxiety about the dogs was actually causing them to react because her energy field was all over them with that anxiety, and dogs don't like anxiety. It tends to make them react badly. So pulling your energy field in actually reduces or eliminates that issue, and therefore causes the dogs to be fine, which therefore reduces the anxiety and therefore causes them to be even better. So all of these things are true, and it's actually a result I've never heard before. So thank you for that, Hannah. I really appreciate that. I've been teaching this class for years, probably over a decade. And I love that I've got a new response there. So thanks for that, Hannah. And then the second email was, "Hi there, Kelle. I just wanted to share that I was absolutely delighted by the Monday episode on the Spirit Guides podcast where you talked about animal communication. This was a popular one, evidently." So, and she said she also loved the title. So you can thank Josh for that. She said, "I work with animals and I work with the wisdom from the animals. I definitely agree about being surprised about what you receive. Sometimes the answers my animals give make me laugh out loud. I'm also an artist specializing in pet portraits. In 2019, through the help of an amazing horse, I realized that I could combine the art energy work and the animal communication to work with my clients' animals even deeper. I then realized how much energy that our animals can carry for us, and then worked out that if I hold space for the animals, profound shifts were happening with their humans because the healing was working through the animal, which was so very cool to discover. My life just keeps getting weirder and weirder with all the things that I've experienced with the animals, and it's absolutely wonderful. They are truly amazing to work with. It was really cool hearing about Josh's snake in meditation. I have a ginger cat who is a very wise sage in a furry body. I also have a dog called My Cat. Oh, that's funny. Who is an energy worker and works with frequency, which is very unique compared to some animals I've worked with. He has a small percentage of dingo in him, and he tells me it's how they work. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm enjoying the new podcast so much. All the very best, Siobhan." So As per usual, we love to hear from you guys. Thank you so much, Siobhan. It sounds like you're doing great work with the animal communication and the healing work through the animals. And this is an interesting concept, guys, that you could heal your animal, heal the human through the animal. And so, that makes perfect sense because we tend to share energy fields with our animals. And so the fact that they would be holding stuff for us is not surprising. But so that's cool. And not at all part of the false light, toxic spiritual shit that we're going to talk about today. This is very cool. So write to us if you would like to have your thing read on the air. And I really appreciate you guys when you reach out. I really do. It means the world to me because, we sit here and we talk to each other and we never hear or see what happens to you on the other end. So it is so nice for us to be able to see the results of what it is that we're doing, especially since we spend so many hours on this podcast every week. It's really edifying to hear that it's actually having an impact. So thank you for that. And with that, let's get on to our next topic. We're going to talk about false light. So, Josh, you want to define false light for people while I put a cough drop in my mouth?
Oh, so false light to me is someone who stands on the soapbox for all that is right in the world while they were doing a bunch of shady shit behind the scenes. Does that seem relatively accurate to you, Kelly?
Yes, and there's another layer to it. There's this concept of you can tell a small truth and have a big lie behind it, right? So that's another place where things can go awry, where a truth can, where a small truth can be used to play into a bigger lie, right? And so when you're dealing with false light, it's like, it's all the namaste, look at me, I'm so spiritual people, right? That's false light. We'll start with that. But then there's also, trying to think of an example of the small truth. So a small truth is you have to surrender to spirit. Okay, that is a small truth that is true in a larger spiritual context. It is also a small truth that can then be expanded into, and I am your teacher, therefore you should surrender to me. And that becomes the false light.
So interesting you say that, because when I entered the Woo Scared program, one of the beginnings lessons is about surrender. And I said, I asked you specifically, first off, I come from a warrior background, so surrender is always like one of the hardest parts of the fucking path. But I asked that specific question, like you said, it's not about surrendering to me, because, we had talked about, and this kind of ties into this, about how as shamans, as coaches, as healers, we hold people's power for them sometimes, but it's all about wanting to give it back, right? Or holding it until they can take, ownership of it. And I asked you specifically about that, and you're like, oh, honey, I don't want your power. I don't want you to surrender to me, just surrender to the process. And in typical fashion, I overthought this for a long time, so. That's
hysterical. Yes. You do that a lot. Yes.
Me?
And one of the things I love about you, because, I did it too. So, okay.
But I think it's funny the sun is shining back here right now, right through here.
I know,
Does that
right?
look like false light?
It looks like actual light from here.
It looks like actual light. Hey, you can't make this shit up.
Maybe it's spirit saying, hey, this guy's not wrong, So this is the thing that you have to be careful of, right? When we come into any new space, we are inherently clueless, and therefore we look for people to guide us, right? You want to be really careful about who the people are that you choose to guide you, because some people are there and they're on their own spiritual path and they're truly sharing from their wisdom and their knowledge, and other people are there and they love the idea that they get to tell other people what to do, and that they get to feel superior, and that they get to have power over, and that they get to be in the hierarchy, right? And so The piece that you want to pay attention to is it's much like any relationship. You want to look for red flags, right? So red flags are do what I say, and I'm not going to explain it. That's a red flag. Okay? Do what I tell you because I am the high priest or high priestess, and I am the one who knows, right? And you have to bow down to so and so, right? If the acolytes and the devotees are telling you this person is someone to be worshipped, that's a red flag. Okay? Because as far as I know, there is no deity on the planet at the moment that therefore means no one should be worshipped. Okay? So anybody who is condescending to anyone, and I mean anyone, it doesn't have to be to you. If you are in the room when the condescension happens, then you should, if you feel uncomfortable by anything that happens, if it feels wrong to you, get out. Okay? Anybody who is asking you to open to alien technology, probably not a good choice. Anybody who is asking you to open parts of your beingness that don't feel right, like there's a possession point at the base of the skull. So if somebody's asking you to open up the back of your neck or the base of your skull, be careful. Okay? Anytime you are being told that you're not spiritual enough, or that you're not working hard enough, or anything that makes you feel bad. If they're trying to make you feel bad, that's a red flag. Okay? If they say, "Oh, I'm going to heal everything in your beingness," run. Okay? Because that is not about you. That is about them feeling like they can do everything. And if you are being healed for something that you are not ready to heal, it will do massive damage. So if you go into a healer who says, "I'm going to heal everything," run. Okay? If they're taking credit for your progress, run. Right? These are all things that are red flags. Now, are there teachers who are in their egos who do still have a good heart? Yes. We all go through a phase where we are teaching from ego to prove to ourselves that we can do it. Josh is waving.
That was a fun one. The ego one was interesting for me. I think we all, it's interesting. We hit different points as we on the uptake with that, right? Like, so first we kind of go through that martyr imposter syndrome to now I'm doing this and I'm great and I'm amazing, and then we get into the ego, and then we think we can do everything, and then luckily enough, if we listen to spirit closely enough, it's like, okay, just realize you're a conduit and get, just like be happy with what you're doing. And, but when that toxicity takes over and someone really starts, it's like they start belittling people, right? Like, that's what I have a hard time with when people say, "I made you," or, like things like this. And I've seen this a lot in the spiritual community around me locally, like there's just a few things happening out there. And it's, I mean, the thing is we know about karma, and in the spiritual world, most people do. So for the most part, I just let karma deal its blow.
Yeah. Well, so there are different ways to experience things, right? So, and there are, not everybody who's teaching out of ego is dangerous. I mean, they're all doing the best they can, right? But you want to be very careful about who you choose to hang your power on, right? Because when you first come into this work, that's what you do. You come in, you don't know what you're doing, and appropriately you hang the responsibility for the navigation of the space to the guide who knows the space, right? It's like, if you were climbing a mountain that you'd never been up and you hired a guide to take you, you would not second guess everything they tell you to do, right? Because they know the mountain and you don't, right? But you also want to make sure that you've hired a guide who, one, actually knows that mountain, and two, has your best interests at heart, right? So, this is why I'm saying you want to be careful who you choose to study with for long periods. I mean, a class here and there, whatever, but, be careful. But let's talk a little bit about toxic spaces that we've experienced over the years, okay? Because toxicity can come from a variety of different ways, right? I went to a Tantra workshop years ago, and it was being led by a well-known instructor, and the room was not protected. And they were doing deep transformational work within this unprotected container. And I was feeling things come into the room that were not good. And I wasn't seeing that they were calling those things in, but those things were following that person because they did not protect the room and they put people in vulnerable positions of doing transformational work within that context. And so, I threw up a container at that point because I'm like, no, not on my watch, right? But that lack of a container while doing that depth of work is toxic space, even though it was not intended to be that, right? So these are things, and sometimes it's, in that case, it's bad facilitation, right? It's like you didn't set a container and you should have, right? But, sometimes it's bad facilitation in the fact that the person is not keeping people safe in the room in a variety of ways. And sometimes that's just, we were at a different Tantra workshop and they were having people get naked and they didn't bother to close the windows. They didn't close the curtains and the blinds. And I'm like, no, it's just stupid stuff that's not keeping people safe, right? And so, that can be toxic space unto itself. And that's not with negative intent. It's just cluelessness and, lack of awareness and lack of attention to keeping people safe. And so, my rule number one is you must keep the room safe. If the room isn't safe, then, there's no point in being there. And so, that I've taken that to the extreme here in Panama with my retreat that I'm doing, that you're coming to, Josh.
I am.
And,
I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. But I spent months trying to find a space that was both good feeling to be in for a long period and something that I could own entirely so that I could guarantee I could keep it safe. And there wasn't space that I could have. I've looked everywhere. So we are having the event, we're meeting at my house because it was the only place that I could guarantee that I could keep safe and sacred and contained for the period of time that we were going to be working. So, that's how seriously I took it. And this is part of the work that you do with this, is making sure that that's where you're going, right? So, all right, I've been talking for a while, Josh. You talk about some of your toxic experiences.
I think, we were talking a little bit about it beforehand, like one that sticks out in my mind the most was, I went to a retreat last year, and during the opening ceremony, the one who was leading it, they wanted to open up the back of the neck, the access point, connect that to the third eye and to the heart chakra. And I was like, I just looked up because we were, like in a breathe, like there was a little bit of breath work, kind of bringing us into that calm state, kind of lulling us a little bit. And I looked up right then and I laughed. I was like, abso-fucking-lutely not. that is absolutely not happening. So, so after that, because I work with, Kelle for a long time, I know how to protect myself. So I didn't run because I wanted to, experience what was going to happen that weekend and monitor it because I care about other people too. And I care about other people's safety. So, I just kind of doubled up on my shields, but it's been interesting, so during that process, I've kept up with a lot of people because I made a lot of good connections at that retreat. And now since I've been doing, I started with the energy reviews that Kelle taught me, but over the last few months, a lot of people have come to me with entity attachments, and a bunch of them from that retreat. It's interesting. It's interesting to me, so that's one of that. And Also when I go to like metaphysical fairs, right? Like our metaphysical shows. You want to talk about toxic sludge? There is like no like energy removal system going on. It's just like energy everywhere. There's no container for these whole fairs, which there's a lot of shit just tracking through, so there's just a lot of, just not a lot of thinking about what's actually going on in, the spaces we create. When I go into any of these, I care. So I create, like a ward within the space so people have a safe space and also a place to remove any energy between readings, So there's, there's just a lot of things that aren't taught. And I just made a Facebook post about this, about truths that I've learned. And one of it is that the people open people up before teaching them how it actually fucking works. And that there's nothing more toxic than that to me. I mean, like, I can't tell you how many people I know, good friends, right, that went into mediumship before they had their shit together, right? Did not have the inner work done that was needed, didn't know shit about protections, wasn't in a high enough vibration to just deflect things, right? Like, weren't vibrating that high. So what happens is, while they're training in this, they're picking up all sorts of shit, and they don't really know how to clean their energy field. And even Reiki practitioners, some know, and some can see that, others can't. Some people are just given the healing. So, like, just going to get Reiki isn't always gonna do it, right? So there's just I consider that toxic too. Like to be able to teach something without teaching what if this happens, like you have to be prepared for that. And there's differing philosophies on that, right? Like, well, it's not in my awareness, so it's not happening. Well, that's great. I've worked with a lot of people that didn't have things in their awareness, were certainly attached to their fucking bodies. So it's, there's a reality to how it works in the third dimension, and when we're communing on a deep level with the spiritual. It just is a fact. And it's hard for me to be proven otherwise at this point, based on 2 years of pulling shit off of people at this point.
Well, and on a more understanding note, a lot of these teachers are teaching what they were taught, right? And a lot of these things, like Reiki is a good example, is taught in a vacuum. It's taught in the context of Reiki and nothing else. And so, Reiki is great. I call it training wheels for energy users, right? And it's great, but it is often taught in a vacuum. I was lucky enough to have a Reiki instructor who was also trained by Incan shamans. So I got double duty on that one, right? So, but most people's Reiki instruction is simply the stuff out of the Reiki books, and they don't talk about how energy works in a larger context. They only talk about how Reiki works. And, that's great for a beginner level, but to call somebody a master and they don't have an understanding of energy at a larger scale is tough. It's one energy, and you will come across things that you don't understand within it, that if you don't have a larger context for your energy work, you will not know how to navigate those things that you don't understand as well. And so all of these things. And I will say that even my Incan shaman Reiki master did not talk to me about energetic hygiene. We talked about opening and closing space. We talked about keeping ourselves safe. We did the whole shebang there, but we did not talk about cleaning up the floor that you just dropped all your crap onto, right? We did not talk about making sure that you're not allowing things, if you're doing healings out of your home. We didn't talk about how to protect my house or how to protect my office space. We didn't talk about how to make sure that the clients who were coming in weren't leaving crap in my space, all of that. And we didn't talk about, we talked about protecting myself, but we didn't talk about clearing my energy field. So it's this weird sort of, piecemeal thing, right? And so this is the challenge, is that the vast majority of practices out there are piecemealed, right? There are things that one person created somewhere along the line and then passed down to somebody else. If it's passed down, I mean, like my stuff was, I've combined everything that I've learned over the last 50 years into my stuff, right? So I haven't, you're teaching the Welcome to the Woo program now, and so that's passed down one generation, right? But a lot of times it's not even passed down; it's just whatever the person could cobble together, right? And each person's doing the best that they can, but there's no universal spiritual curriculum that anybody can learn from. And so I've tried to do that in my courses. I've tried to create that because I saw the lack of it and because I have an engineer brain and I can't help myself. But the upshot though is that a lot of different programs are missing a lot of things. And it's such a huge topic that no one program can do all of it anyway, right? Just because you've got so many different areas of study and so many different angles and whatever. So, but there are some basics that I think everybody needs, and that's what we cover in the Welcome to the Woo series, that keep you safe, right? In all of your work, right? So, I don't want to sit here and say that I'm judging people, because I'm not judging people. I am acknowledging what is true, and that makes it toxic, right? So there are some people out there with ill intent. They're like, I'm going to, steal people's energy, right? I'm going to got all these students in who will worship me, and I will use their energy for my own good, right? There are people out there who do that. They are few and far between. I want to be very clear. It's not that they are everywhere, right? There are people out there who are marketing bros who are trying to make money by telling you what you want to hear, and I can't remember the name of the guy that they outed a few months ago, but, they just discovered that he was full of crap, right? So there are those people, and then there are the toxic people that we're talking about who are intentionally, pulling people in to suck energy from them. And that's between those two groups, I would say that the marketing bros are probably 20, 30, maybe even 40% of the market. And the toxic people are maybe 10%. And then the rest are just people doing the best that they can, teaching what they know, right? So, I want to be really clear. I'm not saying, be worried, right? I mean, you're more likely to hit a marketing bro than you are a toxic person. But I wanted to give you the red flags so that you would recognize them. And you won't be able to necessarily know the difference between the toxic bro, the marketing bro, and the toxic person from the red flags, because they're very similar red flags. It's all about ego, right? But I want you to know that that's what you're looking for, right? So you're looking, let me give you the green flags now, right? So the green flags are, you want somebody who is looking out for your best interest. You want somebody who is always trying to hand your power back to you, who is always trying to show you that you are in control of your own healing, who is always trying to help you find a stronger, more aligned, more positive version of yourself. You're looking for somebody who is willing to challenge you, but not willing to belittle you. Okay, you want somebody who, every time you try to put them on a pedestal, yanks themselves off the pedestal and shows you that they were just like you one time and that you're capable of being where they are, right? You want somebody who, when you say, oh my God, you're so amazing, they'll say thank you, but they're not going to revel in it. They're willing to accept the compliment because they recognize that they've done the work to get there. Because refusing to accept a compliment is still being an ego, by the way. Okay. So, but they're not willing to say, oh, look at me, look how great I am, right? It's like, yep, thank you. It's been a lot of work and I'm still working, right? That's sort of the ideal answer, right? You want somebody who you can see is still doing their work, right? If they look like they've stopped and they're resting on their laurels for long periods, I mean, don't get me wrong, nobody can do deep, intense work long term all the time. everybody needs to take a break from time to time, sometimes very long breaks. But if you can tell that they are still actively willing to be in their work, then that's another green flag. Okay? So these are the ways that you can tell who the healthy teachers are and the healthy healers are to work with. Okay? So, and then be careful about I want to come back to the false light thing for a minute. It is very easy to be, brought down a path where you agree with this, you agree with this, you agree with this, you agree with this, and then they say, and therefore this is true. And if you get yes, 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 clunk, listen to the clunk, okay? Because if the, and therefore, even if the logic holds, if the clunk happens in your beingness, if it goes honk, right? Do not listen to whatever that therefore thing is. Okay, the logic doesn't make a difference. If the clunk is there, your beingness knows it's not true. You may not be able to explain why it's not true, but your beingness knows it's not true. And that clunk is usually the place where they are trying to take you from the real truth to the false truth. Okay?
This is a good time to employ Machiavellian tactics. Thank you, nod, smile, and retreat. Or go straight at them. It depends on your style.
I find it's usually not worth it to go at them.
Absolutely.
Certainly not in public. Certainly not in public. They don't deserve you. Walk away. All right. So there's I've done a bunch of classes at the Human Awareness Institute, and one of the teachings that they teach there is that you do not clear an issue with someone that you don't want to be closer to. And so, because if you don't want to be closer to them, then you're not actually clearing, you're just vomiting angst and upset, right? So if you don't want to be closer to somebody, just walk away. And somebody who's doing toxic shit like that, you definitely want to walk away. And especially if you're new, and I know you guys out there who are in your warrior, we love you. But if you're in your knight in shining armor and you're new, you're going to get yourself hurt if you go at the face of somebody who actually knows what they're doing and is trying to do stuff like this. They're going to mess you up, and you really should not put yourself in that position. So just absent yourself from the room and let other people be conscious humans capable of running their own lives and making their own choices and deciding whether or not they want to stay. So all of these things and more, right? So this is a little bit more on a negative topic than we normally do, but it's relevant. It's important for you to know, because I don't want you guys to get hurt, right? And without the knowledge of what to look for, you don't know how not to get hurt. So, all right. Anything else you want to add to the mix here, Josh?
No. I think that sums it up. Once again,
okay.
Welcome to the Woo program really does cover so much of this. And this is where my basis and maybe my lack of understanding at times comes from, because I didn't have any other teachers. I was blessed to walk under Kelly's tutelage after she, did not allow me into the program the first time she saw me. So I don't know how. Yeah, it's so fucking true. So, like my a little bit of a high horse at times comes from that place of witnessing a lot of people go through a lot of shit that they didn't have to. So I did recognize that at the end, like as you were talking, that I do tend to get a little fussy pantsed sometimes, with when I see people, getting inadvertently or hurt out there, not really factoring in that I had a different teacher than they did. So there's that. Yeah,
and you said something like getting hurt when they didn't have to. The fact that they chose the teacher that they did means that they needed to. Right?
That makes sense.
So this is the thing. We all are exactly where we need to be. And, in terms of, this is one of the ways that we get into the next layer of our spiritual work, is that we move from, good and bad, right and wrong, up and down, blah, 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 right? To just the level of experience. and saying, because I don't know anybody who has had a bad spiritual experience who hasn't looked back at it later and said, wow, it taught me so much, right? It's a tough lesson. It's a harsh lesson, but it teaches you, right? And so, sometimes it's just an experience. Now, why am I getting on here and telling you how to avoid these experiences, if that's true? Because when you're at the beginner stage of experience, it doesn't feel true, and it just sucks. And so if you can avoid it and you can learn the lessons in other ways that are less painful, I want you to do that. So, all right. Well, I think that's it for this week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And we will see you next week for this episode. And don't forget to listen to the Tuesday through Friday episodes as well. And remember, what you focus on expands, and what you intend is what you create. So choose wisely.
So that's it for today's episode of Spirit Guides Podcast. Head on over to iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen and subscribe to the show. Every week, one lucky listener who subscribes and posts a review on iTunes will be entered into a drawing for a $10,000 value grand prize and a private reading with Kelle Sparta herself. Be sure to head on over to spiritguidespodcast.com and pick up a free copy of Kelle's gift and join us on the next episode.